Peter McGarry. If you could, Mr. McGarry, if you could go ahead and take yourself off of mute.
Off of mute.
There we go. Mr. McGarry, who are you representing here today? Okay. Looks like we've lost them. I will go ahead and keep checking folks in here. See, we did have two members of the zoning department, Emily A. House and Matt Lashide. Welcome to both of you. We have, looks like someone under the name Mark Walker or Mar Walker. If you could go ahead and unmute, give me your full name, tell me who you're representing here today.
My name is Mark Walker. I am MD Walker and Associates consulting engineer, and I'm working for Peter McGarry.
Okay.
McGarry Custom Homes.
Gotcha. Okay. Welcome. I see that we have two individuals under the name Allison Ryan. If you could each give me your names and who you're representing here today.
I'm Allison Ryan, and we are residents of the neighboring property. And go ahead.
And I'm Dan Ryan. I'm her husband.
Okay, great. Welcome to the Ryans. Looks like we have Mr. McGarry logging back in. Mr. McGarry, are you with us? If so, we'll need you to unmute. Okay. All right. Well, okay.
All right, I am fully back now.
Okay. Welcome back. Mr. McGarry, are you the property owner?
I'm the builder.
Okay. All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Before we get started, I need to read through our hearing script. This will basically just cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll get started. So this is the June 14th, 2023 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. Again, I'll be presiding over the hearing. The case before us is case number ZH20230074. Purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any potential opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any potential opposing party may want to present must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. So for our purposes here today, I'll allow Mr. Walker and Mr. McGarry to tell me about the project, why they think it's appropriate, any background they think is important for me to know, and then of course, why I should grant the requested relief. We'll then go to the public. So I'll allow the Ryans to provide any testimony that they would like, either in support, opposition, or neutral, or if they just have questions about the project, that's fine, but that'll be your opportunity to join the conversation. I'll then go to the zoning department that has prepared a staff report on the proposed application and allow them to add anything in addition to the staff report if they would like. After that, I will then go back to Mr. Walker and Mr. McGarry. You can respond to anything that's been said by the neighbors or by the zoning department, and then make any closing remarks. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony, which is evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at the hearing here today. In the event of any technical difficulties, we've already seen a little bit, hopefully not anymore, but if there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with the hearing, I may continue the hearing. Otherwise, I'll just try to sort of troubleshoot those on the fly as we see them. Okay, the last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, doing anything other than just strictly observing, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if that's you, if you could make sure that you are off mute, I'll need everyone who's going to testify to raise their right hand and to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay, great. We have everyone sworn in. Who's going to be taking the lead on the presentation for the applicant?
I can start if you'd like me to.
Absolutely. Floor is
Again,
yours.
Peter McGarry Custom Homes. We've been building, for some time, but probably about 15 years within the city. Kind of specializing in hillside lots. We've got a team. Mark Walker is our site engineer. We've got a geotechnical engineer. We've got a structural engineer, an architect, and then we're the builder that follows their instructions. We've been building on hillsides with a lot of success as far as controlling and stabilizing the areas that we're working in. And we've come up with a product that the public is very interested in. So this is just another one. People contacted us, and that's where we are.
Sure. Let me help frame a little bit of the discussion here. So it looks like you want to build a new single-family home on the property, correct?
Correct.
And in order to do that with the design that you have come up with, you'll need relief from the restrictions on height. Is that right?
Yes, a couple of feet.
And do you know approximately how much relief you're asking for, or how much of an extension you're
It's
asking
between
for?
2 and 3 feet in the middle of the house. It's the roof line.
Okay, got it. And then the other piece of zoning relief that you're asking for today is for excavation and fill. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And the zoning code restricts that to 8 feet. You are asking for 8 feet cumulative, and you're asking for 20 feet cumulative cut and fill. Is that right?
Yeah. Mark might explain that a little bit when we get into it. It's cumulative. It's not like we're cutting 20 feet straight down the hill. It's a cumulative of overall cuts.
Mark, could you add some more color to that?
Yeah, so the definition of that is such that it's not really a cut and fill that they're talking about. That number is the difference in elevation between the highest part of our site and the lowest part of our site. That's all that number is. So while we are limited to the highest part of our site to the lowest part of our site being a maximum of 8 feet, our site is more than that, and that's why we get the variance.
Gotcha. And when you say your site, does that mean the lowest area that you're breaking ground to the highest area that you're breaking ground?
Well, as it's described in this staff report, it's the highest elevation on the property and the lowest elevation on the property.
Let me go out of order here. And we have a rare occasion here where we have 2 members of the zoning department. So I'm sure that between one of them, they could add any more context if they think that would be helpful.
Right.
Yeah,
Zoning?
I'm happy to speak to that. So the
Sure.
the cumulative excavation and fill, it does not look at single cuts. So it is not saying you can't excavate more than 8 feet at one single point. It is that the cumulative cut and fill happening throughout the site does not exceed 8 feet. So the way we look at that is sort of the topographical survey that's provided with the elevations. And we look at all of the earth that's being disturbed. So we look at the lowest point that you're cutting to the highest point that you're filling on the site. And we take the difference between those two numbers. So that's the overall elevation on the site that's being disturbed. I know this is a complicated issue, but
Sure.
hopefully that explains it. It's the lowest point you're cutting to the highest point you're filling. And the difference between that is what we look at as cumulative excavation and fill.
Gotcha. Thank
So
you.
just to elaborate a little bit, so if I was filling an inch at the top and cutting an inch at the bottom, I wouldn't have 2 inches of cumulative cut. I could have up to 100 feet of cumulative cut, because if the elevation difference between those 2 points was 100 feet, then I would have 100 feet and 2 inches of cumulative cut and fill. So it's kind of not sure where the language comes from, but
Well, is that right, Emily? Is that how you would measure it?
Well, I mean, I don't know a scenario that would be what's occurring, because we are looking at the overall amount of earth being disturbed.
Hey, Mark, could you speak to what the cut is in the rear of the house where the foundation is? It looks to me like it's.
yeah, so at the most, we're cutting 8.79 feet at the rear of the building. That's the largest cut on the site. And they arrive at the 20 feet because at the rear property line, we have like a 583 elevation. If you look at that profile on the second sheet of the site plan, you've got about a 583 at the back of the property. And then at the street where we're putting in the new driveway, we've got a 563 roughly. And that's how they get the 20 feet of cumulative cut and fill, as I understand it. So
Okay.
maximum cut on the site, 8.79 feet. Somehow cumulative cut and fill ends up 20 feet.
Is that the only cut on the site?
Is what, yeah, the 8.79, yeah, the foundation cut is basically the only cut and that's just the depth from the existing ground. I'm not sure if that existing house has a basement or not, but it probably has the same basement as we're proposing.
Gotcha. Okay. So the only earthwork, whether it's excavation or fill, is happening one cut for the foundation towards the rear of the site. That is 8.79 feet.
Yes.
Yeah, there might be a little retaining wall right behind the house. There's an existing wall back there, but I believe that would be less than 4 feet, which is not regulated under this scenario. It might be helpful just for everyone to see sheet 2 of the site plan.
Is this by any chance the sheet you're referring to?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay,
So you got the 8.79 here.
Right.
That's correct. That's the rear of the house.
And then is this another cut for a retaining wall here?
That could potentially be a cut for a retaining wall right there.
Potentially.
Again, we don't, we've surveyed it. We don't know the exact elevation of that area. Mark, what is that right there?
That's going to be where that's where the retaining wall is going to be. It's just a landscape wall. I mean, like you said, it's less than 4 feet. And there's an existing wall there now that doesn't show up real clear on that profile. I think the existing wall is a little bit closer to the house right there. Yeah.
Will there need to be a cut for this new retaining wall?
Yes. Where you see the solid line below the dashed line, that's a cut.
This one.
Yes, that line right there is proposed ground, and then the dashed line is existing ground. So that'll be a cut to get that shape in there.
So there is more than one cut than just the 8.79 feet cut.
Well, I mean, the whole site's going to be cut, so it's like one big area. It's not.
Yeah.
I don't know that you could count them as 1, 2, 3 cuts. It's just a.
Yeah, and that would be a typical landscape retaining wall. Anything less than 4 feet is not regulated, I believe, by the hillside.
Yeah. So anything less than 8, an 8-foot retaining wall is, complies with the hillside development standards. But again, for the cumulative across the entire site of the excavation and fill and the earthwork, that's also limited to 8 feet. So you add all of those up. So it's 8.79 plus whatever this is, plus any other earthwork that happens across the site. Is that right, Emily?
And yeah, and I can clarify on this, and this is kind of complicated. So we would need to cross-reference this with the site plan and the other elevations. It's not just in one view, but if you look at this, so we're looking, there's the 562.743 on the bottom left.
Yeah.
And you can see that this dashed line is the existing grade. So we're looking at that cut from that 562 point up to the top of that proposed retaining wall.
So here,
Yes, where you are there. So in this view, that is what we look at as cumulative excavation and fill. And again, I would have to cross-reference this with the other sections in the site plan, the regrading that showed there to look at how we got to the final determination. But in this view, hopefully that helps explain it.
Yeah, if you look at the site plan, the retaining wall was higher on one side than the other. So we have to use the higher portion. So looking at this cross section and then understanding the retaining wall is a little bit higher on the one side. It's from the very bottom of the driveway here all the way up to the highest point of that retaining wall. So that's where you get the number.
gotcha. Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Mr. Walker, I assure you, you are not the first. You will not be the last to challenge the way these are calculated. So,
Well, I
let's
would
just
just
look-
say, that a cumulative cut is a volume. So, because you guys are looking at this one section and you're talking about adding distances up, but you could take a section through this house every foot. And then you have to add the 8.79 that you see here, plus an 8.79 that's a foot over, plus the 8.79 that's a foot over. And so the only way to realistically talk about a cut and fill cumulatively is a volume of material. And they, for some reason, they don't do that. So
Sure. Well,
I just want to lodge
as-
my complaint. I'm going to stop.
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, I think we could spin our wheels on this for a long time, especially with me not being an engineer and being a lawyer. So why don't you tell me, Mr. Walker, why the proposed cut fill is reasonable for this particular property and why it won't disturb the hillside or cause problems for adjoining property owners.
Well, so there's an existing house that sits on the site and we are widening the house a little bit, but to encompass both of the lots that are in question. But the foundation that's going back in is no taller than the existing foundation. As we talked about, we're only talking about 8.79 feet of cut in the back of the foundation, and then it gets less from there. And it's just a standard basement, so it matches what all the other houses do on the street. I mean, the only other option we could do is to not have a basement. And I don't know that would be, because sales aren't really my forte, but it seems to me that wouldn't be too good of a product for what everybody expects. But as far as stability goes, it's no different than what's there now. The geotech has analyzed the hillside, and I just don't see, how an 8-foot cut is an issue, because that's what all the cuts are.
Hey, Mark, real quick, it's not a standard foundation. This is a foundation that is based on the geotech's recommendation. Our structural engineer designs the holding power that is required for the hillside to avoid any kind of movement. So a lot of our foundations end up not an 8-inch wall, but they end up 12-inch walls with buttress walls within the foundation, walls that come off the sides and other. So we are working as much as we can with the hillside. Like I said, we have a team that has had a lot of experience in hillside foundations. And the foundation, we are under special inspection and the structural engineer to make sure that these foundations are put in the way that they're designed. So that's a very important part. It's not our building inspectors that can do it, but they also have registered engineers looking at the steel, watching us, the footers. The whole thing is always inspected all the way through.
And Mr. McGarry, how much wider is the foundation for the new home going to be than the existing? Is it? I'm sorry, I don't have that right in front of me. The other home is still up, correct?
Well, they have two 25-foot lots, I believe. And our house is going to be 38 feet wide. I've not measured the existing house, but it is a smaller, older home. Yeah, so our footprint would be 38 feet wide. I would imagine that theirs is 20 something, but I don't know exactly.
Got it. And to Mr. Walker and McGarry, do you believe that the proposed home is from a size and scale standpoint compatible with the surrounding development?
I do.
Okay. So it's approximately around the same size as other homes, you'd say?
Yeah, a lot of the homes are on smaller lots. This one is, when we consolidate the two lots, we will be within the zoning setbacks on the side yards and the rear yard and the front yard. So it will be a larger lot, and there are larger lots in the area where they have larger homes.
Okay. Anything else either of you wanted to provide?
No.
Okay. Let's go to the public. We have the Ryans here. Would you all like to add any testimony or commentary?
Yes. I think, and I don't know if I can speak for both of us, we are generally in favor of the project. I think when we look at the exceptions you're proposing here, we have probably, I would say, 3 concerns. One of which is it appears this report was done prior to us actually finishing a large construction project, so that may affect the setbacks. As I know there was some wording in there that there's a lot of room there. So I think that would be one of our concerns. Just from the pictures, you can tell we have a structure that was not there when the zoning report was completed. And then the second, I think, is I think concern that we've just talked through is the excavation. Really, I think it gets really close, and I'm talking within inches of where that existing retaining wall is to the property line. So I think we do have continued concerns about stability of that and the process of that. When you get into inches, it gets to be, I mean, you guys are here, but we've also lived through enough projects ourselves of, how we're maintaining the construction site. And then as goes down to that as well, I mean, there's one tree that's probably a 1/2 inch on our property line we'd like to retain, and goes within like 2 feet of a wall here. So those are, I think, our general concerns, but in general, I think we are in favor of it. And I think it would be consistent with the area and the lot. I think it's just as it gets really cozy in that back corner with the hill and a newer structure we put up, I think those are our concerns if it's really stable as you get into back there very close.
And are you, Allison, in the blue house next door?
Yes.
We are, yes.
Okay. Gotcha. So the new structure you're talking about is the covered patio in the back there
Yes.
with the hearth?
Yes. And fireplace, yes.
So any excavation that would be done on that north side of Lou and Mackenzie's property, we want to make sure that that doesn't jeopardize the integrity of the work that was done on our property.
And
Got it.
we do not have a retaining wall in that corner where I think it gets real tight. So I think the stability back there is the bigger concern.
Okay, great. Thank you both. To Mr. McGarry or Mr. Walker, do you want to speak to those concerns? Why you don't think this project will have an impact on this?
Well, I would say that we have a 6-foot setback on either side of the house. Generally, if we overdig for us to put the walls in, we might overdig 2 to 3 feet depending on the depth. So we would be within 3 feet of the property line. But we also take precautions if we need any kind of temporary shoring, if we need to cover the walls that are exposed to keep the rain off. We do go the extra mile to make sure that our site is not going to have problems. We don't need problems, and we make sure that we do everything we can to make sure we don't get one.
I'll also say generally from the city's perspective, that this is just a review of sort of the basic zoning to see whether this project sort of fits into the neighborhood appropriately. Some of the more nuts and bolts of the structure and the building permits and things like that, a different department does get into, and there is oversight as the construction moves forward. So this is just a little bit more zoomed out. But let me go ahead and move back to the zoning department. Anything you all wanted to add in addition to the staff report?
Sorry about that. All right, so I don't have too much more to add. I would generally agree with what's been said. The setbacks are compliant with the code and I believe adequate here. We're here to discuss the height because it does go a little bit above in the middle. I haven't heard any concern about that yet. The patio, Miss Ryan, I just want to make sure you're talking about the stone patio and the little accessory structure. So that would not impact our review too much for it. I don't know if the picture that was on there, the picture on there was from Cages, so that may have been not the most recent. I know they do those every couple of years, but
Work
and
was
then your
in
other
process based on the picture.
From the street
Okay.
level.
okay, yeah. And then your concern about the tree is valid, and we do consider landscaping in this review. That's about all I have. Let me know if you have any other questions or anything.
Emily, can you talk at all about the process of review from the building department perspective? I think you may have just a little bit more knowledge on that than I do. What they do during these constructions to ensure hillside stability?
Right. And that's not my wheelhouse, but I'm happy to give sort of a big picture overview. I mean, as you said, this hearing is kind of high level. It is, to some degree, it is looking at a preliminary geotechnical report and making sure that, the plans are consistent with the recommendations in that report, and also looking at sort of compatibility with the development patterns on the hillside and the standards for excavation and fill and retaining wall height. But the building department does a much more comprehensive review at the building permit level of specific geotechnical requirements and making sure that the hillside stability is protected in the construction methods that are proposed. I think Mark Walker also noted this. They will require special inspections as the construction occurs to ensure that all of those all of the structural requirements that are unique to the topography are being followed, and sort of a double check of the work as construction progresses.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate that. Okay, let's go back to Mr. Walker and Mr. McGarry. Anything else you want to say in response to the testimony from the zoning department or the neighbors?
Tell the Ryans that we do respectfully make sure that we keep the sites clean. Silt fence where required. A lot of times we go over that amount. We know that we're going to intrude the neighborhood for 10 months or so, and it's we try and we know that you guys were there, and we want to respect the neighborhood. It's the way we can improve our reputation over time and continue what we're doing. Okay.
I think we'll leave it at that. Thanks to everyone for their time and their testimony here today. I've had a chance to review the application materials and the staff report, and I think based on those and based on the testimony that I've heard here today, I am going to approve the requested relief. I need to formalize that approval in a written decision. I mentioned at the beginning that that typically takes about 2 weeks. I think that's realistic based on the queue that I have. Excuse me, the queue of cases that I have right now. As soon as I finish that, I put it into a PDF and I email it to everybody in the hearing here today. So you all will have a copy of it really just moments after it's complete. That will include the specific relief that I'm approving and any conditions that are attached to the decision. I see here that we do have one recommended condition from the zoning department that there's a consolidation of the parcels. Has that happened already?
No, that'll happen automatically before we can apply for the building permit, actually.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And so you all will have that again, really just right after it's complete in your inboxes, and then to the applicants. Once you have that, Mr. Lashide can approve the permitting for the zone.
Okay. Thank you.
Any
so
questions
much.
about any of that? Okay. Anything from the Ryans?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. If you have any questions or you'd like a status update on the decision, feel free to reach out to me directly. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.